We all remember Uncle Matt, but none of us can prove he exists. My family and I have been going through a very strange experience over the last couple of months. It's hard to even put into words or explain what is going on. I guess I can just start off from where it all started to feel off. A few months back, my family had a big get-together. My parents both have two siblings. They all got married and had some kids. Well, all of them except Uncle Matt. He never got married or had kids. That means I have 10 cousins. My aunts and uncles all live within 2 hours of us, so we've all grown up together. That being said, we don't normally have all my aunts and uncles in a house at once. This was a rare occasion to have a family meal when they were all free. I will not be naming every single family member in this post because that seems like a lot of information, and honestly, you've already gotten more information about my family than you ever wanted, but I promise this context is important. Okay, enough with my babbling. Let's talk about what happened that weird night. My parents and I went over to my Aunt Margot and Uncle Ken's house for a barbecue in the backyard. The backyard felt loud and chaotic. I tried to stay out of the way and get the night over with. I was honestly just there for the free food. We were all sitting down at a big table outside. I was so focused on making sure none of the napkins went flying in the wind, I wasn't listening to the conversation. My Aunt Margot came over to the table with a plate of really burnt hot dogs. My mom immediately started to laugh at the sight of them. Is burning food genetic or something? How on earth do you guys always do that to food? The Jensens need to leave the cooking to the Millers. My mom said with a sarcastic giggle. Uncle Ken looked at her confused. What are you on about, Liz? Uncle Ken snapped back. I mean, Margot burnt the hot dogs and Matt always burns food when he cooks. Remember, we had to ban him for months from cooking because we had to order takeout like 3 times in a row. Everyone at the table laughed, recalling their memories. Sighs of recollection bounced back and forth from person to person when my dad spoke up in Aunt Margot's defense. Honey, what are you talking about? Matt is your brother. I really shouldn't have to remind you of that. My mom rolled her eyes in response to my dad. I spoke up because I was suddenly confused about which side of the family Uncle Matt was actually on. You would think I would naturally just know that, but all my aunts and uncles act like siblings and call each other their siblings. My grandparents often refer to their son/daughter-in-laws as just their kids, so it isn't something I always think about. Wait, I'm confused. Whose side is Uncle Matt on? What is the joke? I don't get it, I asked, but was only met with a laugh from all the parents at the table. I finally got an answer from my mom following the silence of the joke that somehow went over my head. Don't be silly, baby. Matt is your dad's brother. As the words left her mouth, half the table looked confused. Liz, what are you talking about? He's on your side. He's a Miller, my Aunt Margot said as she scraped off the burnt edges of her hot dog. Okay, now I'm with Amanda. I don't get the joke, my mom said while looking at me with narrow, inquisitive eyes, and then at the rest of the group. Wait, everyone slow down, Aunt June said, speaking up for probably the first time in the night. This is dumb. Matt is not Liz and I's brother. He has to be on the Jensen side of the family. I sat at the table watching my family in silence. Their eyes darted back and forth. They stopped laughing and were all just scratching their heads. After a few minutes, my mom got out her phone. She found an old family photo from when she was a kid. In the photo were her, my grandparents, my Uncle Paul, and my Aunt June. Nothing out of the ordinary. After looking at the picture, Aunt Margot got out her phone and looked for an old childhood photo. Aha, found one, she stated as she showed off the photo on her phone. Yet again, the photo was normal. It had my grandparents, my dad, Aunt Margot, and Aunt Susan. The next hour consisted of both sides of the family going back and forth showing photos. None of them with Uncle Matt in them. I had a few of my cousins there, but they all lost interest once they ate. I, on the other hand, couldn't be pulled away. I was engrossed in learning where the heck Uncle Matt came from. They kept talking back and forth. They figured maybe he wasn't anyone's sibling. Maybe he was related by marriage or a second cousin twice removed that I just called Uncle Matt because that was the easiest thing to call him. We all have a relative like that, right? I know an easy solution you might be thinking of is to just call him up. That's also what I said, but he was working and they didn't want to interrupt him. But guess what? I needed answers, so I decided to call him. However, when I looked at my phone, I couldn't find him in my contacts. I looked through it multiple times. I remember texting him about something a few days back, so he should have been in my text history. Still nothing. After being weirded out by his contact being gone, I mentioned out loud that someone should call him, regardless of him being at work. No one agreed with me, but once I told them his contact was missing from my phone, they all got curious and looked to see if he was missing for them too. We were all in shock to find him missing from all our phones. The family started to dig through their camera rolls and any digital libraries. They had to try and find any photo of him. Uncle Andrew thought he had a photo of the back of him, but we soon found that we all remembered him looking differently. Uncle Andrew showed a picture of the back of a bald man who looked pretty tall. Aunt June called him crazy and recalled him having long curly red hair. It wasn't like we hadn't seen him in a year or that he was some kind of distant memory. I saw the guy last week. He came over to my house to help me with some homework, and I can tell you he didn't have red hair or no hair at all. He was well shoot. I can't remember what he looked like now that I think about it. It was safe to say we were all creeped out. As the sun went down and it got chilly out, the group moved inside. Normally, this is when everyone would go home, but I saw Aunt Margot start a pot of coffee. It was going to be a long night. The air was tense and full of unease. None of the adults wanted to go home until they had answers. I could tell the adults wanted to talk more, but didn't want to worry the younger cousins. My older cousin Maddie clearly didn't care about anything that was going on. She just wanted to sleep. We convinced her to take my 3 young cousins into the basement so they could all get some sleep. But not me, I was invested. Uncle Matt and I are close. We see each other all the time. How could I not have a shred of evidence that he even existed? As my cousins shuffled downstairs, all the adults huddled around a big whiteboard Aunt Margot slapped on the kitchen island. They started to write down everything they could remember. What he looked like the last time they saw him, memories of him. None of it was coherent. It seemed he was a completely different person in all our memories. Even if it was a memory where multiple people were around. One of the only things that we could all agree on was that the Jensens always thought he was on the Miller side of the family, and the Millers always thought he was on the Jensen side. My mom recalled a story of Matt and my dad going to a lake to fish, but the hook got stuck on Matt's hat and went flying. My dad told us he remembered my mom telling him the same exact story many times. Everyone had memories of stories where he was on the other side of the family. Soon everyone was on the phone with a new family member trying to tell them the situation and asking what they thought about everything. My aunts and uncles were talking to realities on the phone I didn't know I had. Relatives that probably only met Matt a couple times at best. All I heard was one dead end at a time. No one knew where he came from or where he went. So the big question was, who was Matt? Was he just some random guy who weaseled his way into the family, telling one side of the family one thing and the other side another? Or was it something so much worse? As the sun came up that Saturday morning, we were all still scratching our heads. The deeper we got into who Matt was, the more freaked out everyone got. I was honestly surprised they let me stay with him all night long. The more digging everyone did, the farther away we felt. The more rabbit holes we went down, the less real he seemed. We couldn't find any evidence that he ever existed. Some of us searched all over the internet for Matt Jensen or Matt Miller, and a few of us searched for other last names in the family. Of course, it was kind of hard to know who we were looking for given we didn't know what he really looked like. After hours of discussion, we compiled a list of attributes that never wavered about Uncle Matt. He was a man, he never had a mustache, he was tall, he was bad at math, and he loved Jim Carrey movies. That might seem like a random grouping of facts, but that's because we couldn't even remember where his house was. Some of us completely forgot, and others remembered different houses. It didn't matter. We weren't going to start knocking on doors to find a man we were concerned never existed. We started to believe that as soon as we began to question who he was, he just simply started to fade away into nothingness. Like it was some kind of self-destructive on his own consciousness. It was around 9 a.m. that morning when people started to fall asleep on couches. The night before started with everyone being determined and saying the night wouldn't end until we found Uncle Matt. But here we all were, exhausted and with little to no answers. It felt like accepting defeat by napping on the couch, but we couldn't do much else. At 11 a.m. we all woke up to the sound of my cousins playing in the next room over. We all sat up and rubbed our eyes. You could practically see the gears turning in everyone's heads as they woke up from their stupors. I could tell when they realized their memories actually happened and it wasn't just a weird fever dream. My Aunt Margot stumbled to the kitchen while yawning and started to dig in the pantry for something substantial the kids could all eat. It was clear they had already raided the cookie stash. As the adults had a quiet conversation, we heard something come from my cousin Cass that made us freeze. Yeah, remember last night when Uncle Matt gave us all those cookies? It was so much fun. My small cousin said with a hop and a skip. Wait, Cass, get over here and say that again. My Uncle Andrew yelled in an attempt to sound intimidating, but came out with a voice crack. Cass walked over to us looking like a confused puppy who just got yelled at. What did I do wrong, Uncle Andrew? I thought if Uncle Matt offered us cookies, I could have them. Cass, you're not in trouble. This is very important. Are you telling me Uncle Matt was with you guys last night? Uncle Andrew tried to say in a gentle tone to not scare Cass. I mean, not the whole night, but he brought us all cookies and put a movie on for us. Then he said he wanted to go hang out with you guys upstairs. Cass told us with a quiet voice. Everyone started to frantically look around the room, looking for any evidence of him being there last night. We quickly asked the rest of the cousins if they saw Matt, and some kids did and some didn't. I noticed something when I started to count the objects in the room. There were 10 adults and me upstairs last night. So, there should have been 11 people in total, but I saw 12 plates out with the leftover crumbs from our late night pizza, 12 spots laid out for sleeping in the living room, and 12 mugs or cups of coffee. He was here last night. As I mentioned what I found, my dad said he remembered seeing him last night. He said Matt brought him some water. Uncle Paul said he saw him go to the bathroom, but couldn't remember him coming out. They mentioned how it felt like it never actually happened, but he managed to place the memory in them after the fact. How else would they see Uncle Matt right in front of them and not realize what was happening? I had a strange feeling that started to bubble up. I felt uneasy and restless. Wait, something is off here, I said loudly to the room. Everyone line up on the wall? I want to try something. For a second, they all looked at me confused. They normally wouldn't let me boss them around like that, but they were desperate and tired. All the adults lined up against the wall. As I walked by then, I counted out loud. Something strange happened. I counted 12 people, including me. None of the kids were lined up. I wasn't counting myself twice. There was an extra person. Uncle Matt wasn't just here last night. He was with us in the room at that moment. Other members of the family even tried to count. We did it over and over again, even adding one of the kids to the mix, but every single time there was one extra person. But we still couldn't see him? How was he hiding in plain sight? Everyone ended up leaving my Aunt Margot's house that afternoon. We were all still extremely creeped out about the whole thing, but what could we do about it? Not much. It's not like Uncle Matt ever did anything violent. Mostly normal behavior, except for a few memories of him that were kinda weird. One of us remembered seeing him in the kitchen, stacking and unstacking bowls for hours. Another person remembered him once packing for a vacation, but his suitcase only had trash bags in it. And I have a memory of us sitting in front of a fireplace with him, reading the instruction manual to a blender for a bedtime story. At least those were the kind of memories we had in the beginning. As the weeks went on, we started to remember things that got more and more concerning. He showed up in our houses in the middle of the night, or buying us all hammers for Christmas. He once bought hundreds of dollars worth of knives and put them in my dad's car. Once we developed disturbing memories of him, we tried to tell the police. Of course, they couldn't find any evidence of his existence, so they couldn't help us. It didn't help our case that we couldn't even give them a last name. How on earth are they supposed to find a guy based on his name being Matt and no physical features? So who is Uncle Matt? I can say with 100% certainty, I have no clue. Is he a man? Is he an entity? Is he a figment of our imaginations? Or is he nothing at all? I don't know. And that's the worst part of all. He seems to always be around at family dinners. Most of the time, I count the number of people I end up with an extra person. He feels like a virus, always implanting a memory of himself being around, but in the moment, I never see him. It seems to be a family joke at this point, always leaving out an extra plate for him or something. In my opinion, no one is taking this situation seriously. I know he hasn't hurt anyone, but why should we wait for something to happen? I swear I can feel it when he shows up. The hairs on the back of my neck stand up. My family has given up on trying to figure out who or what Uncle Matt is. But I haven't. It feels like they have all just forgotten the disturbing memories of him. I swear the deeper I dig to find him, the worse the memories get. Like he is rotting and festering in my memories, right before my eyes. I'm starting to think it's his attempt to stop me from looking for him. The fact that he is punishing me for looking for him makes my concern grow more and more. Why is he suddenly running now that I'm onto him? Why is he so afraid of me finding him? And what will happen once I do find him? I'll find you, Uncle Matt. I'll find out what you are.